Okay, so we are going to take a little bit of notes and my action I. Okay, so critical thinking with psychology. Psychology is a science. Like I said, there are some people out there that argue, no, it's not. You're just best guessing. Okay? I can figure that out. This is what my grandmother always used to say. You know, that's all you're doing is just saying what my grandma always says. Okay? But there are problems with relying too much on intuition. There's two things that you both talked about. The hindsight bias and overconfidence. So the hindsight bias is that I knew that was going to happen. Have you ever heard that hindsight is 20/20? Okay? What does that mean? Yeah, you always knew at the end this was going to how it was turn out, right? It's always easy to look back and say, oh yeah, I totally knew that was going to happen. Okay? Overconfidence, on the other hand, is when we think we know more than we do. And this happens all the time, especially if you're talking about like quizzes or tests. Before a quiz or a test, the teacher may ask you, okay, everybody ready? Do you have any questions? Everybody's like, yes, I am ready to go. I know this. I am on it. Okay? And then you go and take it and you're like, holy crap, no. No, I didn't know anything. Or I didn't know as much as I thought I did. I totally forgot this particular concept that's really important. Okay? So both of them are the idea of psychology, the idea that some people try and rely more on intuition than actual psychological research. Okay? So the reason psychology is a science is more based upon the fact that there is research involved. There are proven things. Those 10 things that I just showed you, okay, those are research topics that have been done to try and illustrate whether they are true or not, okay? So it may be something where you think, well, duh, yeah, and you hear this all the time in the news where they will come out with some new psychological research proves blah, 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 and you're like, well, yeah, duh, why did they have to do research on that, okay? I already knew that. No, you cannot say that you know that. It's overconfident saying that you know that without a proven research, okay? For example, way back in 2008, okay, 2007, 2008, there was this huge housing boom bust. Did you hear about this? Okay, where all of a sudden there was all these tons of houses that were up. They were foreclosed upon because people could not pay their mortgages. The basic premise of it, without getting into the whole economics side of it, is the basic premise of what happened was that when you go and buy a house, most people do not have $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, whatever, to be able to buy a house themselves. So what do? They get a loan. It's called a mortgage. Okay. So basically, a loan from the bank to pay for a house is called a mortgage. Okay. Now, here was the problem is that before 2007, 2008, the banks and some other lending institutions started going and giving out mortgages to people that were what they call adjustable rate mortgages. Okay. So most of the time, people would go in and they'd get a mortgage and it would say, okay, you are going to owe, say, 4% interest, okay, on this mortgage. When you pay it back, you need to pay back your $100,000 plus 4% interest, and we will calculate it along the way with your payments. Okay, that's a fixed rate mortgage. It stays the same for the life of the loan. Okay, but with an adjustable rate mortgage, they would say, okay, well, we can adjust that percentage along the way. You see the potential problem here? Yes, this is what happened. The interest rates went up, and they were giving these mortgages to people that could not afford it. Okay? So they would say, oh yeah, according to what you earn, you could totally name a $200,000 mortgage. And they end up, going belly up because they're like, I can't pay that. Especially, well, maybe they could afford originally a $200,000 mortgage, but then when you adjust the interest rate up to, say, 10%, people can't afford it. Okay? And all of a closed homes on. Okay? Here is the hindsight bias. People look at it, and especially economists look at it, and people look at it and they say, knew it was going to happen. It was going to go bust sometime. This is what happened. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Okay? There are some things that can be proven, and there are other things that you're just looking at what previously happened. And I have lots of economic examples because I'm also an economics teacher. But the point is that you're looking at previous events to be able to say, oh yeah, I totally knew that. As far as overconfidence, I have this lovely picture here. And if you can't read it, it says, this is going to end in disaster, and you have no one to blame but yourself. And you have this lovely cat up on the ledge that's trying to approach a bald eagle. Obviously, he's very overconfident with his skills to be able to attack this bird, because obviously cats try and attack birds. Wouldn't want to be that cat. Okay. So, I just wanted to kind of touch upon those. Now, going back to these, okay? If you go back to these are the 10 things, and it was also listed in your book and as to whether or not they are actually confirmed or refuted. Well, if you hadn't already looked, if you want to teach a habit that persists, reward the desired behavior every time, not just intermittently. That's actually false. Anybody know why? It's false because of the fact that it says not just intermittently. If you do it intermittently, okay, they don't know when you're going to be rewarded and when you don't. Okay, so as a result, it's going to be kind of more of a, okay, I did it. Do I get a reward? No, not this time. Okay. Same thing if I come around and every time you did your homework, I came around and gave you a piece of Starburst. Okay. You did it one time, and then the next time you're going to be expecting it. Nope, sorry. Okay, so you don't know when I'm going to come around and check. You don't know when you're going to come around and get a Starburst. No. Okay. Patients whose brains surgically split down the middle and function as much as they did before. This is true. Okay, we'll talk about this in the next chapter. Traumatic experiences, sexual abuse, or surviving the Holocaust are typically repressed from memory. That one is false. Obviously, they have PTSD a lot of the times. Then, most abused children do not become abusive adults. True. Okay? Most of them do not become abusive adults. Most infants recognize their own reflection in a mirror by the end of the first year. False. They think it's a baby in the mirror, some mysterious baby. Adopted siblings usually do not develop similar personalities even though they are reared by the same parents. True. Fears of harmless objects such as flowers are just as easy to acquire as fears of potentially dangerous objects such as snakes. False. Lie detection tests often lie. True. Most of us use only 10% of our brains. That is false, actually, even though that, movies try and tell you things. And then lastly, your brain, I think it says brain remains active during sleep. That is true as well. All right, so how'd you do?
I thought 4 was, I read a bunch of articles that said that a child who was abused was actually, it says it's 9 times more likely to actually abuse someone else.
The abuse, number 4, the most abused children do not become abusive adults. Okay, again, and that is very controversial. What?
She's looking at different statistics. They're saying they're 9 times more likely than a non-abused kid. That doesn't mean that.
Yes, and it doesn't mean that it has and this is one of the things when we get to talking about research is that it depends upon how they conducted the study, it depends upon who was in the study, and what conclusions they can make from it. And so it says, you said 9 out of 10,
9 times more likely.
9 times more likely, didn't say, so you're saying become abusive compared to kids that weren't abused.
The national test.
But if you look at all
Yes,
of these,
you're
kids,
looking
you
at-
could say 1 out
yes.
of 10
Yes.
becomes abused.
Yes, so you have to look at the individual, you have to look at the population as a whole. So they were comparing kids that were abused compared to kids that were not abused, and so that's why there's a slight difference.
Children who experience, this is on the child organization health thing. Children who experience child abuse and neglect are 9 times more likely to be involved in criminal activities.
So again, it has to be, you have to look at within, because this question was specifically talking about most abused children do not become abused adults. So they're
Abused.
yes, so they have to be abused when they were a child and look at,
Oh, I thought, like, I don't know, maybe I read wrong information in a lot of places, but I could have sworn it was, if you are abused, that's what's acceptable to you, so you can actually go. So,
yeah, it says it's most of abused children do not. There are obviously some cases that do. Any others that we were debating? Okay. All right, so a couple other things that I did